Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into a truly bizarre and unsettling chapter of history. A time when your very hair could be a target, a commodity in a strange and shadowy black market. Forget pirates and buried treasure. Tonight, we're talking about the hair thieves of 18th century Europe. Picture this: London, a sprawling metropolis teeming with life. The air thick with coal smoke and the cacophony of vendors hawking their wares. You navigate the crowded lanes, the flickering gaslight casting long, distorted shadows. Suddenly, a swift, almost imperceptible snip, a fleeting brush against your neck, and a chilling realization dawns. A piece of you, quite literally, has just been pilfered. You probably wouldn't last a day without constantly checking the back of your head, a nervous habit in this era of follicular larceny. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Comment your city and local time. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Our story begins in the 18th century, a period marked by extravagant fashion and a peculiar obsession: the wig. For the fashionable elite of Europe, particularly in England and France, wigs were not mere accessories. They were indispensable symbols of status, wealth, and power. The bigger, the whiter, the more elaborate, the better. These weren't just quick hairpieces. They were complex constructions crafted from human or animal hair, meticulously styled and powdered. One widely recognized fact of this era is the sheer expense of these wigs. A high-quality, fashionable wig could cost the equivalent of a significant sum of money, making it a genuine investment for the wearer and a lucrative product for the maker. This insatiable demand for hair to create these towering, powdered creations inadvertently fueled a dark and clandestine trade. Where did all this hair come from? While some was sourced ethically, if you can call it that, from willing donors, often impoverished individuals selling their locks, a significant portion was obtained through far more nefarious means. Enter the hair thieves. These weren't your common pickpockets or burglars. Their target was a very specific kind of treasure: human hair, preferably long, healthy, and fashionable in color. One rather unsettling aspect of this burgeoning black market was its utter lack of regulation or oversight. It operated entirely in the shadows, a hidden network of snatchers, buyers, and wig makers, all driven by the immense profit to be made from the follicular frenzy gripping the upper echelons of society. You can almost imagine the furtive glances and hushed transactions taking place in dimly lit back rooms, snippets of conversation about the quality and length of the latest harvest. The very air in these hidden corners of the city would have been thick with the dust of hair and the secrets of its acquisition. The social implications of this wig obsession were vast. It created a visual hierarchy, where the size and quality of one's wig broadcast their social standing. For the wealthy, it was a non-negotiable part of their public persona. But this very demand created a vulnerability for everyone else, a constant threat that your hair, a part of your very being, could be surreptitiously stolen to adorn the head of someone far more privileged. It's a bizarre inversion, where something so personal becomes a publicly traded commodity, often against the owner's will. You can almost feel the paranoia creeping into the streets, the subtle glances cast at strangers, the reflexive hand reaching up to check one's coiffure. This wasn't just about vanity. It was about a tangible black market thriving in the underbelly of 18th century society, all thanks to the era's outlandish hairstyles. It's a reminder that even the most seemingly frivolous trends can have surprisingly dark and complex undercurrents. revealing uncomfortable truths about social inequality and the desperation it can breed. As the popularity of these elaborate wigs soared, so too did the audacity and ingenuity of those willing to procure the raw materials by any means necessary. The stage was set for a bizarre and unsettling drama played out on the very heads of the unsuspecting populace. It's a strange thought to consider that something we often take for granted, a natural part of ourselves, could become such a sought-after and potentially dangerous commodity. And as you drift off tonight, perhaps you'll spare a thought for those 18th century citizens, forever looking over their shoulders, their precious locks under constant threat from the shadowy figures lurking in the dimly lit streets. The world of fashion, it seems, has always had its dark secrets. Sleep tight, and maybe keep a hand on your head. You now find yourself navigating the labyrinthine underbelly of 18th century London, a city of stark contrasts where opulent mansions cast long shadows over squalid rookeries. The wig craze has reached its fever pitch, and the demand for human hair is insatiable, creating a fertile ground for illicit activity. You walk down a narrow alleyway, the air thick with the stench of refuse and the murmur of hushed voices. This is the territory of the hair thieves, elusive figures who operate in the shadows, preying on the unsuspecting populace. Their targets are varied, from wealthy individuals with long, fashionable locks to the more vulnerable, servants, children, even the infirm, anyone whose hair could fetch a decent price in the clandestine market. These weren't always hardened criminals in the traditional sense. Some were simply desperate individuals trying to survive in a harsh world, driven by poverty to resort to this peculiar form of theft. Others were more opportunistic, recognizing a lucrative, albeit risky trade. One prevalent tactic involved lurking in crowded areas, bustling markets, public gatherings, even during church services. A swift snip with a sharp pair of scissors, concealed beneath a cloak or within a sleeve, and a valuable lock of hair would be gone before the victim even realized what had happened. This required a certain level of skill and audacity, a nerve to get close enough to their target without arousing suspicion. Another, more unsettling method involved targeting those who were vulnerable or incapacitated. There are documented accounts, though perhaps sensationalized, of hair being stolen from the sleeping or the dead. Imagine the horror of waking up with a noticeable chunk of your hair missing, or the desecration of a corpse further compounded by the theft of its hair. These darker aspects of the trade speak to the desperation and moral ambiguity that permeated this bizarre black market. One particularly strange account tells of thieves targeting drunks passed out in alleyways, viewing their unconscious state as an easy opportunity to pilfer their locks. It paints a grim picture of the vulnerability of the marginalized in this era. The sheer volume of hair required to satisfy the wig fashion is staggering to contemplate. Each elaborate wig could require the hair from several individuals. This constant demand kept the hair thieves active and the black market thriving. You can almost feel the tension in the air as you walk through the crowded streets, a subtle paranoia that anyone could be a potential target. The fear of these stealthy snippers became a genuine concern for many, adding another layer of unease to the already precarious existence of the urban poor. It's a reminder that even the simplest, most natural parts of ourselves could be exploited in the right or wrong economic climate. The shadows of 18th century London held many secrets, but the clandestine trade in stolen hair is undoubtedly one of the most peculiar and unsettling. These hair thieves, operating in the dimly lit corners of the city, were a bizarre product of a society obsessed with outward appearance, highlighting the strange and sometimes disturbing lengths people would go to in the pursuit of fashion and profit. As you navigate these dangerous streets, you can't help but instinctively reach up to check if your own hair is still securely attached, a primal reaction to the invisible threat that lurked in every shadow. Sleep tight, and perhaps dream of a world where your hair is safe upon your head. Your investigation into the shadowy world of 18th century hair theft now leads you to an unexpected yet crucial link in the black market chain: the barber surgeons. In this era, the roles of barber and surgeon were not entirely distinct, particularly outside the highest echelons of medicine. Barbers performed a range of minor surgical procedures, from bloodletting to pulling teeth, alongside their tonsorial duties of cutting hair and shaving beards. This unique dual role placed them in a peculiar position within the clandestine hair trade. Barbershops, often bustling social hubs, became a natural point of contact for the hair thieves. They were places where hair was regularly cut and discarded, and the barbers themselves had connections to the wig makers. It's not difficult to imagine a discreet conversation taking place in the back of a dimly lit barbershop, a furtive exchange of money for a bag of freshly shorn locks. No questions asked. While some barbers may have knowingly participated in the black market, purchasing stolen hair for a lower price than ethically sourced locks, others may have been more unwitting participants, simply buying hair from individuals without inquiring too closely about its origins. The line between legitimate trade and illicit dealing was likely blurred. However, some barbers actively fostered this clandestine trade. They had a vested interest in ensuring a steady supply of hair for the wig makers they supplied, or even for crafting their own rudimentary hairpieces. By purchasing stolen hair, they could increase their profit margins, capitalizing on the desperation of the thieves. This created a network of complicity, where barbershops became unofficial clearinghouses for pilfered tresses. One intriguing, though potentially apocryphal, story suggests that some barber surgeons even used their surgical tools to assist the hair thieves, providing them with sharper, more discreet scissors, or even offering them refuge in their shops after a daring theft. Whether fact or folklore, it highlights the close, if uneasy, relationship between these two professions within the context of the hair black market. The barber's connection to both the public and the wig-making trade made them indispensable to the hair thieves. They provided a relatively safe and discreet way to offload their ill-gotten gains. The barbers, in turn, benefited from a cheaper supply of hair, fueling the ever-growing demand for wigs. This symbiotic relationship, though born out of illegality and desperation, formed a crucial pillar of the 18th century hair black market. As you sit in a recreation of a period barbershop, the scent of pomade and the glint of steel razors take on a more sinister hue. Knowing the secrets these establishments may have once harbored, sleep soundly and hope your barber's intentions are purely tonsorial. Your pursuit of the 18th century hair thieves now leads you away from the crowded, shadowy streets of London and into the quieter, seemingly more idyllic rural countryside. Here you discover a different, perhaps less overtly criminal, but equally unsettling method of hair procurement. While urban centers were plagued by stealthy snippers, the rural areas saw a more organized, albeit still exploitative form of hair harvesting targeting the impoverished. In the countryside, poverty was often rampant, and for many, survival was a daily struggle. It was in this environment of desperation that a grim trade flourished. Hair buyers, often acting as intermediaries for wig makers in the cities, would travel to rural communities offering to purchase the long hair of the poor, particularly women and children. While this wasn't technically theft, the circumstances under which these transactions took place were often far from ethical. The individuals selling their hair were frequently in dire need of money, and the prices offered were meager, exploiting their vulnerability. It was a transaction born not of choice, but of necessity. This practice often targeted young women with long, healthy hair, which was particularly prized by wig makers. Imagine a young girl, her prized possession, her long, flowing locks, being sold off for a pittance to feed her family. It's a stark illustration of the economic hardships of the time. One particularly poignant detail is that hair was often measured and paid for by length and weight, treating it as a mere commodity, devoid of its personal significance. Furthermore, there are accounts of hair buyers employing manipulative tactics, preying on the ignorance or desperation of the rural poor. They might exaggerate the value of the money offered, while downplaying the significance of the hair being sold. This created a system where the impoverished were often taken advantage of, their very appearance becoming a source of meager income in times of hardship. While seemingly more legitimate than the outright theft in the cities, this rural hair trade was nonetheless a morally gray area, built on the exploitation of poverty. As you walk through a recreated 18th century village, the simple beauty of the countryside is tinged with the knowledge of this hidden trade, a reminder that even in the most serene settings, desperation can lead to unsettling transactions. Sleep peacefully, and may your choices always be your own. Having followed the stolen or sold strands from the dark alleyways and rural villages, your journey now culminates in the opulent workshops of the wigmakers. Here, amidst the scent of powders, pomades, and the faint, lingering odor of human hair, you witness the transformation of pilfered locks into the elaborate, towering wigs that defined the fashion of the 18th century. These workshops were often bustling places, filled with skilled artisans meticulously sorting, cleaning, and styling the raw hair. The process began with washing and combing the hair to remove dirt, grease, and any unwelcome inhabitants. This was a laborious task, often involving harsh chemicals and repeated rinsing. Once clean, the hair was then sorted by color and length, the different shades and textures being crucial for creating natural-looking or deliberately unnatural-looking wigs. The wig makers employed a variety of techniques to construct these elaborate hairpieces. One common method involved sewing the hair onto a linen or silk foundation, creating wefts or strands that could then be shaped and styled. For larger, more voluminous wigs, horsehair or even goat hair might be used to provide bulk and structure, with the more expensive human hair used for the visible outer layers. Another technique involved attaching the hair to a pre-made scalp, crafted from leather or parchment, creating a more realistic hairline. Once the basic structure of the wig was complete, the real artistry began. Wig makers were highly skilled in the art of curling, crimping, and shaping the hair using heated irons and rollers. They would meticulously style the wig according to the latest fashions, creating intricate waves, rolls, and towering pompadours. The final touch was the application of white or gray powder made from starch or flour, which gave the wigs their characteristic pale appearance and also helped to absorb grease. As you observe these wig makers at work, you can't help but reflect on the journey of the hair they are so skillfully manipulating. From the head of an unsuspecting Londoner or a desperate rural peasant, these strands have been transformed into a symbol of wealth and status, a stark reminder of the social inequalities that underpinned this elaborate fashion trend. The wig workshop, with its air of artistry and craftsmanship, also holds the hidden history of theft and exploitation, a bizarre paradox at the heart of 18th century style. Sleep soundly, and may your own hair remain firmly rooted. Your exploration of the 18th century wig craze now leads you to consider the sharp contrast in social status that this fashion trend both reflected and perpetuated. The elaborate wigs, symbols of wealth and power, were primarily worn by the aristocracy and the affluent middle class. Yet, the very material used to create these status symbols often came from the heads of the poor and the marginalized, highlighting a bizarre and unsettling paradox. The wealthy patrons who sported these towering, powdered creations likely gave little thought to the origins of the hair that adorned their heads. For them, a wig was a necessary and expected part of their public presentation, a visual marker of their social standing. The bigger and more expensive the wig, the more it reinforced their position within the hierarchical society of the time. It was a fashion statement that loudly proclaimed their privilege. In stark contrast, the individuals from whom the hair was often taken, either through theft or exploitative purchase, occupied the lowest rungs of society. Their long hair, a natural part of themselves, became a commodity to be sold or stolen out of desperation. The meager sums they received for their prized locks, or the violation of having it stolen without their knowledge, underscored their vulnerability and lack of power. The wig, therefore, became a tangible representation of the vast social and economic divide that characterized 18th century Europe. One particularly jarring aspect of this dynamic is the anonymity of the hair's origin. A fashionable lady in her elaborate wig would have no idea whose head her tresses once belonged to, or the circumstances under which it was obtained. This disconnect further highlights the social chasm between the wig wearer and the hair provider. It's a disturbing thought that an outward display of wealth and status could be so directly linked to the exploitation and vulnerability of the less fortunate. The powdered perfection of the wig concealed a hidden history of social inequality and, in many cases, outright injustice. As you contemplate this stark contrast, the seemingly frivolous fashion of the 18th century wig takes on a much darker and more significant meaning, revealing the uncomfortable realities of a society built on profound disparities. Sleep deeply, and may your understanding of social justice continue to grow. As you delve deeper into the unsettling world of 18th century hair theft, you begin to uncover the ingenious and often unsettling tools and techniques employed by these follicular criminals. Operating in a time before sophisticated surveillance or forensic science, the hair thieves relied on stealth, speed, and a degree of audacity to ply their bizarre trade. Their primary tool was, of course, a sharp pair of scissors. These weren't necessarily specialized implements, but rather everyday sewing or tailoring shears that could be easily concealed. The key was their sharpness, allowing for a quick, clean snip that would minimize the victim's awareness of the theft. Some thieves may have even adapted their scissors, perhaps shortening the blades or adding a spring mechanism for quicker action. Imagine a pair of these unassuming tools, glinting faintly in the dim light of a crowded street, poised to silently steal a piece of someone's identity. The techniques employed varied depending on the target and the opportunity. One common method, as mentioned earlier, was the swift snip in crowded places. The thief would move through the throng, often using a cloak or a basket to conceal their actions, and with a practiced hand, snip a lock of hair before melting back into the crowd. This required nerve and agility, the ability to get close enough without being noticed, and to make a clean getaway. Another, perhaps more brazen, technique involved working in pairs. One thief would distract the victim, perhaps by bumping into them or asking for directions, while the other would quickly snip a lock of hair from behind. This division of labor increased their chances of success and reduce the risk of getting caught. Imagine this coordinated dance of deception playing out in the busy streets, a silent conspiracy against unsuspecting passers-by. For targeting sleeping or incapacitated individuals, the thieves needed to be even more surreptitious. They would often operate under the cover of darkness, using quiet movements and relying on the victim's unconscious state to avoid detection. This darker aspect of their trade speaks to a greater level of desperation and a disregard for personal boundaries. One particularly weird detail involves the rumored use of sticky substances or gum to help isolate a lock of hair before cutting it, preventing other strands from being disturbed and further minimizing the victim's awareness. It's a testament to their ingenuity and their dedication to their peculiar craft. The tools and techniques of the hair thieves, though simple, were effective in their time, highlighting the vulnerability of individuals in an era where such a bizarre crime could flourish. Sleep peacefully, and may your hair remain untouched by unseen hands and sharp implements. Beyond the primary demand for wig making, human hair in the 18th century held a surprising number of other, often peculiar applications, further fueling the black market and adding another layer to this strange historical phenomenon. Your investigation now uncovers the more fringe uses of human hair, revealing a world where locks and tresses were valued for more than just adornment. One intriguing application was in the realm of love tokens and sentimental jewelry. Locks of hair were often exchanged between lovers, family members, and friends as keepsakes, symbolizing affection and remembrance. These locks might be encased in lockets, woven into bracelets, or incorporated into rings. While much of this hair was willingly given, the existence of a black market meant that some individuals might resort to purchasing hair to create these sentimental items, blurring the lines between genuine affection and illicit acquisition. Imagine a love locket containing hair obtained through clandestine means, a secret history woven into a symbol of devotion. Human hair was also used in mourning jewelry, often intricately woven into elaborate brooches, rings, or pendants. These pieces served as tangible reminders of the deceased and were worn as a sign of grief. Again, the demand for hair for this purpose could have inadvertently supported the black market. It's a somber thought that even expressions of sorrow could be linked to a potentially illicit trade. Perhaps one of the more bizarre uses of human hair was in decorative arts and crafts. Hair was sometimes used to create intricate pictures, embroidered scenes, or even furniture upholstery. These were often seen as displays of skill and patience, showcasing the versatility of this unusual medium. The fine texture and natural sheen of human hair made it surprisingly adaptable for these delicate crafts. Imagine an elaborate embroidered artwork crafted from strands of stolen hair, a testament to the strange and varied uses to which this commodity could be put. Furthermore, there were superstitious beliefs and folk magic practices that incorporated human hair. It was sometimes used in love spells, protective charms, or even curses. This belief in the mystical properties of hair could have created another, more clandestine demand within the black market. Imagine a shadowy figure purchasing a lock of hair for a secret ritual, adding a layer of the occult to this already strange trade. The diverse and often unexpected uses of human hair in the 18th century highlight the cultural significance of this seemingly mundane material and the extent to which its value could extend beyond mere fashion, further complicating the ethics and reach of the hair thieves' black market. Sleep soundly, and may your hair only be used for adornment you willingly choose. As the 18th century progressed, the activities of the hair thieves did not go entirely unnoticed. Whispers of stealthy snippers and stolen tresses gradually grew into widespread concern, leading to a growing sense of fear and a belated legal crackdown on this peculiar crime. You now witness the societal response to the unsettling phenomenon of the hair black market. Newspapers and pamphlets began to report on incidents of hair theft, often sensationalizing the accounts and fueling public anxiety. Stories circulated of unsuspecting individuals losing significant portions of their hair in broad daylight, creating a climate of paranoia, particularly in crowded urban areas. People became more cautious, instinctively guarding their hair in public and viewing strangers with suspicion. The fear was not just about vanity. It was about a violation of personal space and the unsettling feeling of being targeted for a part of oneself. While specific laws solely addressing hair theft might have been scarce initially, existing laws against theft and assault could be applied in cases where the thief was caught. However, the stealthy nature of the crime and the difficulty in identifying the perpetrators made successful prosecutions rare. As the problem persisted and public outcry grew, authorities began to take the issue more seriously. There were increasing calls for stricter policing and harsher penalties for those caught stealing hair. Some local ordinances may have been introduced specifically targeting this type of theft, although comprehensive legislation was slow to emerge. The challenge for law enforcement lay in the difficulty of detection and proof. A snip of hair was often a swift and silent act, leaving little trace and few witnesses. Despite the challenges, arrests were occasionally made, and those caught in the act of hair theft or found to be dealing in stolen hair would face legal consequences, ranging from fines to imprisonment, depending on the severity of the offense and the jurisdiction. The crackdown, however, was often reactive rather than preventative, struggling to keep pace with the ingenuity and prevalence of the hair thieves. One interesting, though likely embellished, anecdote from this period tells of vigilante groups forming in certain communities, taking it upon themselves to patrol streets and apprehend suspected hair thieves. Whether factual or folklore, it reflects the level of public frustration and the perceived inadequacy of the official response. The fear of hair thieves became a tangible part of the social landscape of late 18th century Europe, a bizarre reminder that even seemingly minor crimes can sow seeds of unease and paranoia within a society. Sleep soundly and be grateful for the relative safety of your slumbering locks. Your journey through the strange and shadowy world of 18th century hair theft now reaches its conclusion. As the century drew to a close, a confluence of changing social trends and new ideas about hygiene began to loosen the grip of the elaborate wig fashion, ultimately leading to the decline and eventual disappearance of the hair thieves' bizarre black market. The extravagant, towering wigs that had been the hallmark of status and style began to fall out of favor. More natural hairstyles became fashionable, influenced in part by the French Revolution and a growing sentiment against aristocratic excess. Simpler, shorter hairstyles for men gained popularity, and women began to adopt more natural-looking arrangements of their own hair. This shift in fashion directly impacted the demand for the vast quantities of human hair needed for the elaborate wigs. Furthermore, a growing awareness of hygiene and the potential for wigs to harbor lice and other unpleasantries contributed to their decline. The laborious process of cleaning and powdering wigs was increasingly seen as cumbersome and unsanitary. A greater emphasis on personal cleanliness and natural appearance gradually eroded the appeal of these artificial hairpieces. As the demand for wigs diminished, so too did the profitability of the hair black market. The hair thieves found their once valuable commodity becoming less sought after, and the clandestine network of snatchers, buyers, and wig makers began to unravel. The economic incentive for this peculiar crime simply faded away as fashion trends changed. By the early 19th century, the era of the grand powdered wig was largely over, relegated to ceremonial occasions or historical reenactments. The hair thieves, once a genuine threat lurking in the shadows, became a bizarre footnote in the history of fashion and crime. The fear and paranoia they had once instilled gradually dissipated as hairstyles became simpler and more personal. The story of the hair thieves of 18th century Europe serves as a fascinating and unsettling reminder of how social trends and economic forces can create the most unexpected and peculiar criminal enterprises. It highlights the lengths people will go to in the pursuit of fashion and profit, and the vulnerabilities that can arise from even seemingly frivolous societal obsessions. As you drift off to sleep tonight, you can rest assured that your hair is unlikely to be the target of a clandestine black market, a testament to the ever-changing tides of fashion and the eventual triumph of more sensible styles. Sleep peacefully, knowing that the era of the hair thief is long gone. Sweet dreams.